the sufficient social safety net for their people. So I would like to encourage the Secretary to think in more depth about how the GEF resources would be effectively and efficiently used for that purpose. And at the same time, I would like to flag some risks are emerging. For example, we understand a lot of countries have adopted the economic stimulus package to assume the growth. In this regard, we would like to see there is a risk.
John Jing, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your volume is very low. Could you get closer to your microphone, please?
Okay, so it's better now?
Much better, thank you.
Oh, sorry. So I should have close to my microphone. So I mean, since a lot of countries have adopted the economic stimulus package, we will see the risk of enhancing and increasing level of greenhouse emission, the risk to the biodiversity and the land degradation. So we would like to encourage the Secretariat staff to closely monitor the progress and to have the assessment on the afterwards of the those economic stimulus package on the environment issues. And therefore, we should be be ready to allocate sufficient resources to respond to those challenges. So regarding the program, we like our support to them. We just have one comment on one project. So we found the child project of the GF7 Global Wildlife Program Addendum, GF ID 10561, Secton Wildlife Sanctuary in Bhutan is located in the disputed area between Bhutan and China. Therefore, China, according to its policy, opposes this project and does not join a council decision on the GEF7 Global Wildlife Program Addendum. So with this opportunity, China would like to request the implementing agencies to comply with their policies on disputed area and the GEF Secretariat to strengthen its discretion in this context. So let me stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Some council members have requested if you could send us that in writing, as they missed the earlier part because of the volume levels. If you send it to me, I'll be happy to distribute. Next speaker is Nuruddin from Russia, followed by Peter from Australia.
Thank you, William. Good morning, Nauka, Gustavo, William. Happy to see you all, and wish and hope you and your beloved ones are safe and healthy. I will congratulate all of us for convening the council meeting in such a manner so that we will keep the dynamics of the GEF activity as usual. In this regard, grateful for the GEF Secretariat and Nauka for preparing all the necessary documents. And following the main topics raised by my colleague from China, also start from raising the issue of the financial situation on the environmental finance, followed by the COVID-19 and the economic crisis, where we will see the shortening of the finance, which will be sent to the environmental actions. It is a reality we need to keep in mind when we will be discussing the work program and the particular project. I think that the work program has been prepared in a very well manner, very well balanced, and thanks to Gustavo and your team for making such a work program, which covers really important issues, and it is also moderately spread between the geographical position and also on the main topics. At the same time, I have some issues to raise. Let me start from the global programs which were put on the work program. On the common oceans, here we should keep in mind that definitely we are for the better ocean. And of course, at the national level, regional level, we are doing a lot to fight the marine plastic, to make our oceans cleaner, etc. But at the same time, please keep in mind that there are still negotiations going on under the United Nations on the areas beyond national jurisdiction. And here, when we are planning the activities, we need to keep in mind that still not all the issues are being resolved. There are heated discussions and debates between different stakeholders, between the nations, so that when the activity is being included in the GEF program, we need to keep it. Second, definitely it is a very positive the issue related to the program Gold Plus. It is really the necessity which we see is, unfortunately, from the environmental point of view, is developing fast. Personally, I've seen what being done by artisanal miners in a number of African countries, and really the GEF has to act and to assist these countries to assist the artisanal mining to switch from the mercury use to other technologies. But at the same time, of course, we need to include a number of other countries in this program. For example, personally, I have the request from our bilateral partner, Sudan, where more than 1 million artisanals are engaged. And it is terrific when you see how sometimes children are treating this mercury, etc. And at the same time, they are asking why they are not being included in the number of the programs financed by the GEF or other institutions. And the third, it is the regional. Here it is the request for Gustavo and Secretariat just to clarify the difference between two projects which are in the Black Sea area. One which is for the fisheries and ecosystem-based management of the Black Sea, and the next is the blueing the Black Sea. Whether it is not duplicating each other when we are putting almost the same issues, the difference in only in the implementing agencies, or it is the different content where the same countries, the same area are being getting the financial resources from the GEF for making the Black Sea more environmental friendly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nuruddin. Next is Peter from Australia, followed by Pavich from Thailand.
Hello, colleagues. Good to see and hear so many of you, albeit at something of a distance. First of all, I'd just like to note that unless stated otherwise, any comments I make represent the constituency in my seat, which is Australia, New Zealand, and the Republic of Korea. I'd like to join others in thanking the Secretariat for ensuring that we have a council meeting despite the travel restrictions, and an agenda which is manageable, and I'm looking forward to the discussions today and tomorrow. I'd also like to thank Nalco for her opening remarks, particularly reminding us of the challenges and complexities of COVID-19, the impact it's having on everyone involved in the GEF family. And Gustavo, I'd like to thank you for your presentation and for the paperwork around the work programme. Broadly, I just want to recognise and commend the overall shape of the work programme. It's pleasing to see that it covers global programmes, regional programmes, impact programmes, etc. It really is a good model of the overall direction that we gave for GEF 7. So very pleased to see that. Also pleased to see the projected results for this suite of programmes that we're looking to endorse. Very welcome maintenance of a high co-finance ratio, which colleagues will recall was a hard-fought item at the programming recommendations and program recommendation part of the replenishment discussions 2 years ago. But it is very pleasing to see that we are continuing to exceed the targets that we set on that. Also, I particularly would like to note that there is a healthy number of projects for small island developing states, and indeed many of those beneficiaries are Pacific Island countries close to Australia and New Zealand in particular. So we're very, very keen and very pleased to see the GEF continuing to address environmental challenges among our Pacific neighbours. On non-grant instruments, Australia in this seat was keen to see that programmes cemented in the GEF 7 framework. And it's very pleasing to see that with that now an established part of the work programme, that the demand remains high. And further, that the 4 programmes that are selected in this work programme are all rather transformational. And I think when you look at the figures for co-finance and the amount of private capital that is being generated, it really does show the impact of a small, well-targeted and highly catalytic investment by the GEF in the non-grant instrument programme. So strong commendation for that. Finally, on COVID-19, we are keen to keep an eye on the impacts that COVID-19 will continue to have in recipient countries and on elements of co-finance for some time to come, I fear. And in particular, note that, of course, many of the programs and projects that we are endorsing here will have started life at a concept stage well before any COVID impacts were even contemplated. So I think joining with comments from colleagues Zhongjing and Nuruddin, I think it's important that we continue to monitor COVID-19 impacts on the delivery of these programs, be it around travel restrictions, capacity in recipient countries to focus on GEF program delivery, and also in particular on previous comments, the availability of co-finance that was predicted at the concept stage. But overall, this is a very positive, powerful work program and one which my seat is very happy to endorse. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Pavic from Thailand, followed by Manrique from Argentina. And please note we have 10 speakers yet on the list.
William, and nice to see you, everyone. And thank you very much for the GEF Secretariat for convening the East Asia constituency meeting. And we have come up with the common position that we take note the work program amount at $645.5 million US, and we would like to endorse the work program. In addition, we would like to take opportunity to convey the appreciation to the GEF Secretariat for facilitating our countries in developing the project proposal. We're very happy that GEF Secretariat helped us not only improving the project proposal, but also enhancing coordination between OFP and implementation agency. Lastly, for the COVID-19 pandemic issue, we think that it takes the effect to the sort of GEF Trust Fund and also co-financing to the GEF project. We concern that this might affect the overall budget for project implementation in this regard. Like China, Russia, and Australia just mentioned that we support that further to monitoring impact of a pandemic on GEF projects implementation would be useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pavic. Manrique from Argentina, followed by Cordula from Germany.
Thank you, William. Good morning, Naoko. Good morning to everybody. I hope you are all well and safe in these very particular and complicated circumstances. We want to thank Naoko and the Secretariat for this document, and thank to Gustavo for the presentation as well. The South Cone constituency is very happy that some countries of our constituency are included in the current program, including the small grants program that has proved to be so successful in our region. Now, we also wish to state that as the GEF is the financial mechanism for multilateral environmental conventions, we are all subject to approval of projects within the framework of GEF policies. Currently, the GDP per capita indicator is part of the START calculation, which has resulted in less resources allocation for many countries in the region. Considering indicators outside environmental conventions, and this includes also the ODA, such as the GDP per capita, does not reflect the challenges and needs that our countries face in terms of mitigation, adaptation to climate change, conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, land degradation, pollution, waste management, and so on. This is inconsistent, with the objectives contained in global GEF policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manrique. Next is Cordula, followed by Marita from Sweden.
Okay, thank you. And good morning, everybody. Good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are. Thanks to the Secretariat for making this virtual meeting possible in these difficult times. We would also like to thank the Secretariat for its efforts to propose this comprehensive work program despite the circumstances. We welcome that resources are being requested by 14 of the 18 GEF agencies and that funding is balanced between both agencies and focal areas. The proposed resource allocation across focal areas and regions is also appreciated, although we have noticed that there is less funding for African countries this time. We would, however, like to highlight some issues regarding the uploaded project documents. More than 1/3 of the project documents we aim to review were partly incomplete or missed entire sections. While we thank William for his tireless efforts in addressing our concerns, we would like to reiterate the importance of a timely provision of the complete documents so as to give us, our experts, the necessary time for a thorough review. Assessing 76 projects in 4 weeks is an enormous task as it is, and we would like to call on the Secretariat to ensure that we can perform this task adequately. Regarding individual project proposals, we request that the Secretariat sends draft final project documents for Council review 4 weeks prior to CEO endorsement for the following 7 projects. It's a project number 10444 in Mauritania, development of an integrated system to promote the natural capital in the drylands of Mauritania. The project Laos 10499, Lao PDR Landscapes and Livelihoods Project, GEF ID 10501, IFC GEF Greener Shipping Investment Platform, GEF ID 10538, Tunisia, Oasis Landscapes Sustainable Management Project, GEF ID 10553, Regional Sava and Drina Rivers Corridors Integrated Development Program, and GEF ID 10563, regional blueing the Black Sea. And lastly, GEF ID 10572 in Gambia, Integrated Landscape Management Gambia project. In these projects, we generally agree with the overall objective and approach, but found that crucial information was missing in the proposals. This included many issues which we will be discussing in the coming days, such as knowledge management, risks, additionality, and stakeholder engagement. We are ready to engage with the Secretariat and agencies in case any questions arise. Nonetheless, we welcome the overall quality of the work program. The projects are generally well aligned with the national circumstances and focal area objectives. As always, we will provide our comments in writing within the determined time frame. We would be interested in hearing, like others, in hearing more about COVID-19 impacts on the programs, and we would also be interested in hearing how the next program will focus on key issues arising with the COVID-19 situation, rather than just following up with the projects as they are in the pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cordula. Next is Marita, followed by Sano from the CSO network.
Thank you, William, and thank you, Chair. We'd like to start by congratulating the Secretariat on this comprehensive work program, covering most focal areas and integrated programs. We welcome especially the two proposed programs within the respective focal areas of international waters and chemicals and waste. We can approve the work program. Like others, we would also be interested in hearing more about the potential impacts of COVID-19 on the work program. And we would also suggest that the Secretariat follow up and report back to us at the next council on how they see the effects and how this program has actually been able to contribute to reduce the negative impact of the pandemic in developing countries. We also note, like some others, that and welcome, I should say, that we have 14 of the 18 agencies represented in the work program, and I think that's a progress from before. Excuse me. Sorry for that. We also welcome the comments by Aparna. We also would be interested in knowing, having a bit more information on what we can do to improve the outcome indicators, especially in those areas that she mentioned. And we would finally like to join the comments made by Finland on the SDGs and on gender equality. Those were questions that we also had. And let me just also take this opportunity to thank the Secretariat also for and the IAO for responding to all the questions that we sent yesterday. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Marita. Next is Sano from the CSO network, followed by Stefan from Switzerland.
Hello. Greetings from GEF CSO network and Cambodia. First of all, I would like to thank Madam Chair for her very comprehensive opening remark, and also thanks to Gustavo for his comprehensive presentation on the work plan, our work program, and also thanks to the Secretariat and technical team for making this event happen. I have my written statement I submitted. I am just topping up few points from the discussions. One is relating to COVID-19. Just now we learned that from Peter from Australia. He also commented on the COVID to monitor and then how it worked. China supported, Thailand, Germany. So Germany also pointed out that the knowledge management, risk, and stakeholder engagement issues to consider. And it also connecting to the opening remarks of the Madam Chair. So my suggestion is we should have a very concrete baseline at the post-COVID period. If we don't know the baseline, then we don't know what to monitor. We need to set the target. We need to see baseline on what? Age and sex disaggregated, how it impacted, because it is impacting in terms of climate change, in terms of economic, in terms of health, in terms of other vulnerabilities. So we need to point out very clearly all these agendas to do the baseline, and then country by country and community by community set the target, so that there is a mechanism to setting the scorecard to monitor. If we don't do that, then we don't think there would be a very helpful mechanism. To do this one, we have two recommendations. Recommendation one, all the programs in future design, including the programs for indigenous peoples groups, it should be an element where sex and age disaggregated baselines are there. If we don't put into the programming, then it may not help us. And then second is, we have one of the best option to go to the community level, that is small grant programs. So we have to also do the sex and age disaggregated baseline through the small grant GP program lines, so that we can identify what is the impact in terms of climate change, in terms of health, COVID vulnerability, in terms of financial or economics, in terms of others. And then that respective communities, they can set their own target, and then all the communities from one country, that will be cumulated to their country target, and that move to the global target. And only GEF is in the best position to undertake such mechanism. Out of GEF, there is no other institution can do this job. So to make these two recommendations happen, I would like to recommend that to let us form one ad hoc committee with the interested council member, can be 3 to 5 council members joining this team. And then we have some experience, and secretariat, they have a very good team. So all together, we can make a scorecard, we can set targets, we can facilitate, and then we have time for interaction, because the 6 hours event we brought into 3 hours. So it is very difficult to consult in details, deep dive consultation, so that to bring out what exactly we want to do. So our very concrete recommendation is to form a ad hoc committee with the GEF Council members. If the council want, we will be happy to join, and then we can contribute. We have experience to do that. Thank you so much, and I am expecting our colleague also may compliment something. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sano. Next is Stefan from Switzerland, followed by Victoria from Austria.
Thank you, William. Thank you, Secretariat and the agencies and the focal points for a robust work program. We also thank the technicians and the magicians behind the complex setting up of this conference. We'll see tomorrow by the end of the day how well it worked, but it could be a model for others that are still hesitant to use this way of working together. We have a few comments that we will also, the more detailed ones, we would like to then send in written form, but we would like to share a few comments with all the council members. We believe that this work program is significant in size, well balanced. It covers all focal areas and regions. It also has a good NGI component, and of course we are big supporters of the small grants program. We join others regarding COVID-19 and the consequences. We hope that the situation will stabilize and become slightly more normal. But we believe that the next council meeting would be good if we could, by then, in end of this year, assess of impacts of COVID and how to cope with it so that the work program of the GEF continues to be thriving and is not halted. Allow us 3 questions. One is on the Global Green Chem Innovation and Network Program. We very much welcome this program. We concur with the comments raised by STAP. Our question there is, since this is a project outside of the STAR allocation, we would like to know on which basis the recipient countries were selected. On the follower, in some cases, co-financing numbers seem to be very high in our understanding, in particular because the co-financing is often declared as in-kind contribution. So could you explain to us in the Council how you will ensure that the co-financing will materialize? And we prefer that having more realistic co-financing figures that can be met by all project program partners. And finally, on project 10370 building sector in India, we will provide you with more detailed comments. Our development cooperation is very active in this field, together with Indian government and partners. Let us point out 4 major points where we believe this project would benefit, and it should be incorporated before CEO approval. One is the scope of the project. In our view, it should include all types of buildings, so including residential buildings and not just only focus on commercial buildings. It should also look at cooling in an integrated way and not only focus on mechanical cooling, example giving through air conditioning. A third point, of course, this project, if it really wants to have deep impact, should be implemented in close collaboration with the states that are concerned. And finally, UNDP as the agency, should we expect that UNDP involves crucial entities with a lot of experience in cooling and energy efficiency in the implementation of this program. In India, there's very many of them, and they have very broad experience, so no need to reinvent the wheel. With these comments, we are ready to approve this work program. Thank you.
Thank you, Stefan. Next is Victoria from Austria, followed by Rob from the USA.
Thank you very much, William. I would first also like to thank the GEF Secretariat for all efforts that have been made to make sure that this virtual meeting runs smoothly. I'm pleased to speak after Stefan, who's my physical neighbor at the physical council meetings. So thank you for making this possible. In this context, we've already submitted comments on the work program, and I am very grateful for the Secretariat for providing written responses so promptly and with such great detail given the short time. Thank you for that. That also allows me to keep my remarks now very brief. I would just like to make 2 very quick comments. The first one is that we support the work program. We also think it's very well balanced, and we especially appreciate the focus that it places on international waters, as there were some lagging results in that area. So yeah, I appreciate that focus. The second point I'd like to make is on gender. We understand that there's no specific gender target under GEF 7, but we would still like to express that we fully support all efforts that GEF projects make to actively target gender equality. And that's all from our side. We're ready to approve the work program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Next is Rob from the USA, followed by Gillian from Jamaica.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Happy to be here with you. First, I want to thank the Secretariat and technical staff. I've heard someone earlier describe this as magic, and I have to agree. I'm super impressed that we're all able to meet via this WebEx platform. It is a really amazing experience to participate in this. First, thank you to the GEF Secretariat, the implementing agencies, and the countries for the work program, we appreciate another strong package of GEF programming and will send further detailed comments in the coming 2 weeks. We also welcome the Secretariat's initial thinking on safeguarding existing GEF programming from the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly those investments in combating wildlife trafficking. We also note that the Secretariat rightfully recognizes that the needs of the post-COVID recovery will be varied among countries. We believe that country-driven programming is a key strength of the GEF, and thus want to ensure that any work by the GEF in this area remains in support of country-driven strategies and recognizes that there is no single top-down definition of or pathway to a robust recovery. With respect to the work program itself, given time constraints, we'll just make 2 overarching comments. First, we note with concern that UNDP both receives the majority of funding in the current work program, and that UNDP projects also represent more than half of all grievance cases currently flagged for the Council. We want to feel confident about supporting UNDP projects in the future. The United States continues to work with other countries to understand the drivers of these concerns and to encourage their remedy, and we look forward to ongoing engagement with UNDP and other Council members towards this end. Second, we also want to flag an issue for further discussion by the Council and Secretariat, highlighted by India's request for support for its 4th National Communication and 4th Biennial Update Report. This proposal is the first request in a transitional period for climate reporting, with biennial transparency reports, or BTRs, now to be submitted by the parties to the Paris Agreement. Mandatory BTR reporting begins in 2024. Countries therefore will need to request BTR funding soon, possibly within the next 2 work programs. We understand that India's original proposal did request funding for the BTR elements, and that these were dropped because the Secretariat had not developed guidelines on BTR support. We encourage the Secretariat to develop those guidelines in advance of the next work program in order to both facilitate efficient delivery of support for climate reporting and to enable us to understand the resources needed to support climate reporting as we move into the GEF 8 replenishment. Additionally, the UNFCCC COP decided that for years in which a national communication is due, it could be submitted together as a single report with the BTR using BTR guidance with certain additions as applicable, and that such a single report would satisfy the national communication reporting obligation under the convention. Therefore, from 2024, a standalone national communication separate from the BTR is no longer required, and requests for the financing of separate national communications and BTRs would be duplicative. In US view, funding 2 separate reports with duplicative content is poor fiscal management, particularly when they can be prepared and submitted as a single report. We look forward to working with the Secretariat and interested Council members to navigate this transitional period efficiently and in ways that avoid any precedent-setting or duplicative reporting. We also look forward to continuing to engage with India to ensure that this project can be implemented in a way that avoids duplicated efforts or the need to submit duplicate reports. Thank you very much, and I'll stop there.
Thank you, Rob. Next is Gillian from Jamaica, followed by Adriana from Ecuador.
Good morning, and thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to also meet you. I have a few comments, Gustavo and his team, for the work that they have done in preparing the work program. And we think it's a nice broad suite of projects. However, we believe that it's important to monitor the impact of COVID-19 on project implementation, especially in developing countries and particularly in small island developing states. Already, we have seen whereby the fiscal space to implement projects will be impacted. And in fact, we can begin to document the impacts of this pandemic now and in the future in developing countries, in beneficiary countries. I think it's very, very important because there are going to be some issues re-implementation of projects, not just submission of projects to the GEF for approval, but also implementation of projects already approved. And so that has to be taken into account, and we need to start to document those experiences. Additionally, we are concerned about comments re the DAC eligible countries. There are countries in my constituency, small and developing states in the Caribbean, which have graduated. And so it is important as GEF, as a grant funding institution, to also recognize that these countries are still vulnerable to a lot of the impacts of environmental global commons. And so those things must be taken into account when we are discussing how countries are eligible for support from the GEF. And so we ask that consideration be given to those countries which are particularly vulnerable to global environmental issues. Additionally, we want to speak about the expansion of the GEF implementing agencies, particularly in areas of the Caribbean. We still see that there are not enough GEF implementing agencies working with Caribbean states to implement GEF funded projects. We are still boxed into a silo of about 2 or 3 GEF implementing agencies. And so we would like the other agencies to expand their reach to assist us in increasing our resilience to these global environmental issues. And these are some of the few things that we want to see taken into account as the work program evolves. And we thank Gustavo again and his team for the work that they have done thus far. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gillian. Next is Ecuador, Adriana, followed by Yoshiko from Japan.
Thank you, William, and thank you also the Secretariat for this work program. The Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador constituency celebrate the 6 projects included in this work program that involves our countries. And we want to thank the Secretariat for the technical support. The 3 countries are glad for the integrated watershed management of the Putumayo-Isa River Basin Regional Project, which covers a unique area of the Amazon region in terms of conservation, biodiversity, and water resources, but threatened by extractive activities. Brazil is also thankful, especially for the Pantanal project, which plays an important role for the sustainable development of that region. Colombia is also glad for the inclusion of the project for mainstreaming biodiversity conservation in the tourism sectors of the protected areas and the strategic ecosystem of San Andres, Old Providence, and Santa Catalina Islands, and the project to reduce marine plastic and plastic pollution in Latin America and Caribbean cities through a circular economy approach. Ecuador also is really glad being now part of the electric mobility program. On the other hand, please allow me to deliver the following statement on the behalf of Colombia. Colombia wants to express its nonconformity with the technical review process of the project for the conservation and sustainable use of Ciénega Grande of Santa Marta. Unfortunately, the review process did not allow the inclusion of this project in the current work work program of this council, despite being crucial for Colombia and providing global environmental benefits. Ciénega Grande is a complex ecosystem crucial for national and global biodiversity due to its composition, structure, and function. It contributes to the socio-ecosystem connectivity strategy of the Greater Caribbean, and it is classified as a Ramsar site, as an international area for birds, due to the strategic position in northern South America and as UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. Besides, this project has drawn the attention at the high-level government, given that it is incorporated on national, regional, and local agendas and has a unique governance structure that contributes to the compliance of the Agreement for Stabilization and Termination of Conflict signed in 2016. We believe that it is important to adjust the formal and informal project review processes involving the GEF Secretariat, the implementing agencies, and the operational focal points, generating synergies that facilitate technical discussion and strategic analysis. In this perspective, Colombia is open to keep working with all the relevant actors to avoid further delays in the consideration of such an important project, and recalls the will to continue addressing the recommendations given by the GEF officials. Additionally, as it was said before, we noticed that the climate change focal area does not have important resources allocated in this work program. We would like that GEF continue to deliver special attention to this area, as it has been able to produce global environmental benefits, besides of notwithstanding of the existence of other international dedicated funds. Finally, we support a partner about cancellation and co-financing topics, bearing in mind that COVID-19 pandemic significantly affected the schedule and the capacity of recipient countries to carry out the preparation activities related to projects approved by GEF Council. Some of those are currently experiencing logistical and communication difficulties in our region, which may hamper the fulfillment of their schedule. We understand that this may affect many other countries and could be even more intense in countries without adequate communication infrastructure. During this period, many of the implementing agencies, as well as GEF Secretariat itself, have been working on a home office regime, which further impacts project preparation schedule. In this regard, the constituency of Brazil, Colombia, and Ecuador would like to propose an exception or temporary suspension of 12 months deadline for project preparation fixed on GEF and GEF cancellation policy while the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic lasts. Finally, we also want to support what our colleague Manrique from Argentina expressed before. Thank you.
Thank you so much, William. This is from Naoko.
Yes,
I
Naoko.
just wonder actually how many more speakers are on the list, because we were almost passing actually 30 minutes before beyond the time expected. So you could just let me know how many more on the list?
We have another 9 speakers on the list.
Okay. So in this case, we really would like to seek your collaboration to kind of to be concise. So, okay, let us go on.
Thank you very much. Yoshiko from Japan, followed by Ben from the UK.
Thank you. I'd like to be brief, as many others have already stated what I was about to say. I just first really want to thank the Secretariat's effort to bring this work program document together and its effort to quickly address the COVID-related issues and bring them to our awareness. We hope that we can continue to receive updates on how we handle the implications this problem may have on project formulation and implementations, just as what other delegates have said. As we weren't clear about to what extent the COVID-related costs and implications were factored into the figures that were proposed at this council, we were wondering whether how council is going to be updated on any of these changes, if there is going to be a systematic way of doing so. And this goes the same with the disbursements founded on certain assumptions of an appropriate co-financing ratio. We are in an extraordinary financial environment where some markets are broken with poor liquidity. So rather than predicating on an aspiration of the attainment of an expected outcome, it would be good to understand how figures and expected outcomes can be or will be flexibly adjusted based on these financial realities to achieve our adopted targets. It will also be good to understand if any prioritization should be made to achieve the most efficient implementation of as many programs as possible to benefit as many countries as possible in light of these disruptions. Again, we welcome these programs, especially the increased programming under international waters, especially related to encouraging improved practices for sustainable use of marine resources. And again, thanks to the Secretariat for their good work. Thanks.
Thank you, Yoshiko. Ben from the UK, followed by Rationale from Mauritius.
Okay, many thanks, William, and also many thanks to the Secretariat for making this this meeting possible. Also, just like to say thanks to Gustavo for his presentation and the document, and also just to say thanks to Naoko as well for her introduction to the meeting while we had the chance to say that. We've already made some comments in writing, and thanks for the quick answers, as others have said about that. We will also provide some more comments in writing after the meeting. I think the UK would welcomes the way that the work programme has been framed in the context of a current COVID pandemic, and it's helpful to see the GEF's work in the context of green recovery and the need for transformational systems change in relation to natural and human systems. As the UK Prime Minister said at the UN Secretary-General's high-level event on finance and development last week, we owe it to future generations to build back better and base our recovery on solid foundations, including a fairer, greener and more resilient global economy. We welcome the information document that GEFSEC has provided on the GEF's response to the COVID-19, particularly viewing this from a perspective of the immediate, medium and long-term actions. We particularly note the questions in writing and obviously all the comments we've received so far today from China, Australia, Germany and others about the impacts of COVID on the implementation of the portfolio and the engagement with GEF agencies. And we agree on the need to keep track of projects and the impacts from the COVID pandemic. And as just suggested by Japan just now, it'll be useful to hear when we expect to receive more information on this, i.e. is it at the next council meeting, or would we expect to hear something before that? Finally, just to say that in relation to that information document, again, not for this meeting, but it'll be useful to discuss maybe in more detail what is meant by a blueprint, given the fact that there's a hugely varied GEF portfolio. Just to conclude by saying that we're very happy to approve the work programme in full. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Next is Rationale from Mauritius, followed by Anar from Canada.
Hello, everybody, and thank you, Naoko and the GEF Secretariat team for this virtual meeting organization and the large work program. We fully support the program. It covers several countries in my constituency, including the SGP program. And thank you, Naoko, for the email of yesterday regarding the extension of the cancellation policy and showing the flexibility that you will extend it further if need arise, because in several countries in my constituency are already feeling the impact of COVID. With closure of international borders, we can't have international consultants coming in to finalize all the project documents. While we upload the large amount of co-financing in this work program, we would like to highlight that going forward, this might become challenging because even for PIFs already approved, while developing the project document in my constituency, we feel that the GEF Secretariat should show more leniency and understanding regarding the co-financing, which might not be as large as are already approved in some of the PIFs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rashna. Next is Anar from Canada, followed by Luis from Spain.
Thank you very much, William, and thank you, Naoko and Gustavo, for your presentations. I wanted to start off by saying that we are happy to endorse the work program. But first off, I wanted to note that we do very much appreciate the efforts that have been made to circulate the comments that have been received by different council members and the responses from the Secretariat. We firmly believe that this will help to enhance transparency and allow for good governance, particularly in the context of virtual meetings. So very much thank you for making that effort. In terms of our comments on the work program, in the interest of time, we will provide our comments in writing, but I just wanted to note that we support many of the previous comments that have been made, including Australia on the importance of the non-grant instrument programming, India on improving outcome indicators, and Finland on gender and the SDGs. With respect to the impacts of COVID-19 on programming, we also support the comments that have been made on monitoring the impact on project implementation and reporting back to the council on that. But I also wanted to make an additional point on gender. So as the GEF develops a plan to identify risks and needs in programming and operations to respond to COVID-19, we hope that efforts will be made to put women and girls at the center of these efforts, because we know that this will lead to a faster and more effective recovery from the crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Anar. Next is Luis from Spain, followed by Paola from Italy.
Yes, thank you, William. Let me first say that I'm very glad to be here, as this is my first intervention in the GEF Council. I can be very brief since all of the points that I was going to touch upon have already been discussed. First of all, and very especially, let me thank the Secretariat for the organization of the meeting. I think it's very heartening to see that we can do this virtually, and we very much hope that this will be a model for other international institutions to move to in the next few weeks. Having said that, we support the work program. We think it's well balanced operationally and geographically. We very much welcome the fulfillment of our expectations on co-financing, as well as the way that the impact of COVID-19 has been taken into account. And just a very brief comment before finishing related to the work program. As regards the role of middle-income countries, this is, of course, a recurrent issue in our discussions, but just to highlight that the combination of inequality with some institutional shortcomings may frequently mean that middle-income countries have less resources at their disposal than we would think to deal with their climatic and environmental challenges, and that gives us a powerful rationale to continue to support them in a balanced way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis. Paola from Italy, followed by Brenda from Mexico.
Thank you very much, William. Thank you, Madam Chair Naoko, and thanks so much to the Secretariat for the excellent organization of this virtual meeting. It's really good that we stay open for business during these difficult times. And as Luis just said, this is a model for other institutions who may be more reluctant. Thank you also for the comprehensive work program that you presented, which takes us to the midpoint of our cycle. And it's very good that this work program was not substantially affected by the pandemics, but of course, inevitably, in the coming months, there will be consequences. And management both of approved projects and of the pipeline for future work programs will have to adapt. So as others, we look forward to a comprehensive impact assessment and also wonder, how to intend to keep the council informed for any changes that may occur in the implementation of approved projects. So this work program, as others said, is fairly balanced, although we regret that Africa this time is less represented, but of course we'll look across different work programs. So that may be rebalanced in the future, and also across agencies, as we see in Table 4. It would be very useful at some point, or regularly rather, to have GEF financing set against each agency own annual operations and portfolio. To have a more complete picture of our partners. 2 quick points to finish. I would like to echo the comments made by our Norwegian colleagues on non-DAC eligible countries. Although, of course, heard and noted Gillian's comments, nevertheless, we still believe that the bulk of GEF financing should go to low-income countries and to the most fragile countries. And finally, we too welcome the 4 non-grant instrument projects. As others noted, they have potential. These kind of projects have a potential for impact, innovation, so it's a very welcome instrument. Although it leads me to a comment on the per sector strategy, which of course we'll deal with later. And I have to say, I tend to agree with Stefan's comments during the previous session that that document may not be ripe for approval yet, but it's a very important piece of our overall strategy and approach. With this, I am happy to approve the proposed work program. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, Paola. Brenda from Mexico, followed by Aparna from India.
Hi, hello everybody. Thank you, William. I want to start by thanking the GEF Secretariat in making this council possible. Thank you everybody for having made this council possible despite the travel restriction we're facing. The constituency I represent welcome and endorse the work program, and we're glad to see that we have allocated 61% of the GEF 7 replenishment resources. Additionally, well pleased to see a well-balanced work program in terms of geography and sectoral distribution. Specifically, our constituency is participating with several projects on a regional and domestic level that we believe will contribute to our environmental goals on chemical biodiversity and oceans. I just want to stress something very briefly that some of my colleagues have already mentioned in terms of the fiscal restrictions that some of our countries are facing right now and the negative implication this could have in the level of co-financing that we have seen so far. We have seen a very successful level of co-financing in general of what we have been presented. However, the current situation we are living might have some implications, and I think that's important to evaluate for the GEF in order to be able first to identify this could be a risk, and then also to explore potential measures that could be helpful given the things that the world needs to face during this 2020. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brenda. Aparna from India, followed by the final speaker, Maria from CSO.
Thank you, William. I'm going to take only 45 seconds. Just to confirm that as far as India's project is concerned, the work that we will undertake for preparing the databases for submission of NatCom and BUR in 2023 will certainly feed into the data required for submission of the BTR in 24, provided that there are areas where we can do this kind of coordination. Since the BTR is not due till 24, and since the format for preparation of BTR is not yet available, we would request GEF to also take up this matter with the COP so that we can have early information on what will be the format and data for BTR. That will help us to design, in fact, the submissions to be done in 23 even better. Thank you so much. And it will ensure there is no duplication, which is neither intended nor designed. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So Maria and Lucy, both from the CSO. So Maria first, followed by Lucy.
Hi, hello.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, William. And thank you, Gustavo, for the presentation. And especially knowing how key is the role for the CSO network, just be working in the work program. We really happily received this work program and go specifically inside some of the projects that is the project 10550 is International Waters number 39. That, just to be brief, if a binational and integrated water resources management in the Merlin Lagoon Basin and coastal lagoons. This project and is key to mention this is in the line of co-financing is very high and it's a 4.8 million from GEF and is 77 million from co-financing. I mean, we see here how it's potential of the financing of the GEF, just working in this kind of project, and it's an international water project for our country. I mean, it's very important. Just highlighting this, that the FAO is working very hard with civil society, and just consulting is in the PPG process. It's still an 11-month for work, but this is only an example, because I'm not going just to each one of the project listed, but also we have the 10554, that is transboundary cooperation for the conservation, sustainable development, and integrated management of the Pantanal, that also have inside the role of civil society, and we really appreciate that, and it's a real intervention of CSOs. Saying that, and being what happened with the COVID situation in our region and in our area, and for the CSO around the world, in some projects, like they are still implementing or now implemented, we are just having some little not going so far or so fast on the implementation, is because maybe sometime if you are working in an already implemented project, they try not to be so clear and about what is the direction, and the COVID is directly related with the environment and with ourselves. I mean, we have to be very strong on just put that on the agenda from the council members. And this is a very important thing. What I want to thank you is how we've been working very close with the GEF from February to prepare this meeting till today, and we have a lot of support, just working together with all the civil society and the indigenous people. And now, not to use more time, I want to give the floor to Lucy, and she wants to end this happily. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. And thank you, William, Madam Chair Naoko, and Gustav for the giving us a good summary. As Indigenous people, we welcome this work program with a number of projects that engage Indigenous people. Noting traditional practices are essential for the survival of Indigenous people, particularly in addressing and responding to COVID-19. And there is a need for increased support for these parties and their for these practices and their communication. Activities by outsiders on Indigenous people's lands as a destructive resource extraction, in addition to the loss of global environmental benefits, also carry the threat of disease. We also believe that IPLCs can and should play a key role in the green recovery, noted in point 7, including in developing alternative approaches to local livelihoods, such as in relation to the devastating impact of COVID-19 on the wildlife tourism economic upon which the Indigenous people depend on. And on this note, IPAC suggests an early warning system for APLCs should be included in the GEF response. And on this one early warning system, Indigenous people should also be helped with the technology for such early warning systems, so that they can be also able to monitor and reporting a system for the programs. IPAC has established conduct with the Minamata Convention and can provide advice for the Gold Plus program related to the uncontrolled and unregulated small-scale gold mining, and should fully include Indigenous people and local communities. And we are glad that this was mentioned by some of the council members. In reference to the key features of the GEF resource request for the work program, we are very happy that is from the paragraph 22, 23, and 24. We note with appreciation that the second tranche of the GEF 7 small grants program, with its core funds included in this work program, and IPAC fully supports its approval, and hope that the next council meeting will also approve that tranche. Why? Because the GEF small grants program Continued support is critical for indigenous people, women, youth, and community-based groups, plus also the civil society under this challenging situation with the COVID-19. This will empower the small grants program to be able to provide important support to these stakeholders, such as indigenous peoples, local communities, and also the other CSOs to have a good recovery measure in line with the GEF strategy and approaches. Together with the GEF CSO network, which include indigenous people as always, as Maria has already explained, we will continue collaborating with the small grant program and seek council enhanced support towards the small grants program under GEF 7 and beyond. And finally, GEF and its agencies must ensure comprehensive stakeholders engagement, especially with indigenous peoples throughout project development, despite challenges faced by COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That ends the list of speakers. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, the Council, of all exciting comments and questions. Before I hand over the mic to Gustavo for his response, I just want to pick up the question and the comments about COVID-19. And basically, I really listened to your question, the comments very carefully. And our approach has basically two-pronged approach. So that while we are really taking care of the risks, assessing risks, managing risks, and mitigating risks very, very carefully, particularly due to the fiscal space squeeze and political attention may not be there. But at the same time, we also need to see that the opportunity side, and there are quite a number of projects at our hands, including, of course, wildlife trafficking project, but also a lot of projects on the food system, that the supply chain, the sustainable forest management, even cities and the chemical and waste. So there are quite a number of projects already at our hands, or actually at your hands, to actually help address the causes and the consequences of the COVID-19. So we need to employ or deploy those kind of measures and to our benefit. But in the longer run, my belief is that, or my conviction is that this COVID-19 is basically the collision between natural system and the human system. So we need to really take the longer term view, how we can continue to transform the key economic system. And that's what we really like to focus on. And in that regard, I'm so grateful and so excited to hear several council members actually mentioned about green recovery. And I think that China, Mr. Wang, very rightly pointed that a quick, I wouldn't say dirty, but then a quick recovery is kind of discussed in many by many governments. And then I'm actually frightened to see some of those recovery plans does include some measures and suggested policies, which will actually slide back us into the that all the traditional conventional key economic system, which we try to get out. So I think we are, or I feel that we are at a very critical juncture of how we can get over from traditional system towards much more greener, cleaner, resilient, inclusive, low carbon, say that the nature positive and the economic system, so that while we were actually moving towards the tipping point, COVID-19 came and bit of swept us back to trying to slide back to the wrong way. So I think it's extremely important for us to really come together to make sure that all what we will be doing for the next few months and years, really pushing us to help us to get over that tipping points towards this the low carbon, nature positive, resilient, inclusive economy and society. That's what actually we call that the green recovery or transition, that the green transition. And I hope that we can work together towards that goal. For that, I think that the narrative is important, how we could bring those the ideas and that together. And we also have a lot of measures we can deploy to push that idea. So I think that GEF want to continue to work with all of you to create that narrative and push ourselves and push the society and the economy to get over that tipping point towards that green, clean, resilient economy. So that is my comment on this COVID-19. And I would like to ask the
Naoko, before I'm sorry to interrupt you, Naoko, but I apologize. I missed Stephanie from France, who also wanted to speak.
Okay, so that yeah, come in, please.
Thank you. So again, thank you for the organization and participation to this virtual GEF Council meeting. France thanks the GEF Secretariat for this work program elaborated within the current crisis, and France welcomes and supports this work program, in particular the two new programs on Gold Plus and Common Oceans, although as usual, we will send some comments in written. Regarding the Common Oceans program, I just wanted to say that France is not only supporting the principles of this program, but also praising the co-financing of one child project on the pilot site of Sargasso through the Fonds Français pour l'Environnement Mondial. However, following the comment of Norway on non-ODA eligible countries, we would appreciate to know what is the ratio up to now of the GEF 7 resources allocated to non-ODA eligible countries. And finally, as there is no item on the agenda, but a lot of our colleagues' comments on the COVID, we would like to touch upon also the work regarding the COVID-19. France appreciates the rationale explaining how the GEF 7 strategy, including this work program, already constitutes part of the response for a green recovery post-COVID-19 that will need to be supported through the future projects. France also appreciates the information document providing elements on the response of the GEF to the COVID-19 pandemic. As already mentioned by other constituencies, we encourage the Secretariat and the implementing agencies to continue these efforts on the medium and long term as the consequences of this crisis are spreading. We will need altogether to monitor and answer to the potential impacts of the COVID-19 on projects, including, for instance, on co-financing local communities and gender. Although we would welcome any internal reflections of the GEF Secretariat on its activities in the area of preventing the emergence of infectious diseases and environmental degradation in general, we would like to understand how this work would be done in coordination with existing external works from relevant organizations such as IPBES, for instance, IPBES, for instance, and in coordination with other GEF's bodies, STAP and IEO. The objective should be to avoid any overlap of work and any unjustified increase in budgetary costs. Finally, France will appreciate to discuss more on the potential impacts of this crisis throughout the GEF's strategy and portfolio and the GEF's response during the next council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I think now I would like to ask Gustavo to respond the series of questions and comments. Gustavo, please come in.
Thank you very much, Naoko, and thanks immensely to all of you for a very rich set of comments, recommendations, and analysis about the work program and the support that you've given it. It's very, very much appreciated. In the interest of time, I just wanted to extend a warm thank you to all of you who offered these comments. I'm not going to go over them because they are all very relevant. They will be taken into consideration by the agencies. We'll make sure that they are reflected. We already received quite a number of comments from you in writing, and those also have been remitted to the agencies, and we are going to be closely following their incorporation into the design phase of these projects. And we also welcome over the next week or so additional comments in writing that you've committed to giving us. So thank you very much. So I'll concentrate mostly on the questions and clarifications that you requested from us. in the interest of time. Just quickly on the statement from Ecuador on behalf of Colombia, we just need to reiterate that we are committed to the project, but because of remaining technical issues, it could not be cleared in time for this work program. We've been in touch with both the government of Colombia and IDB frequently, and we are working out the details that remain. On the question of China in regards to the area where the Global Wildlife Program will be working in Bhutan, we understand from the agency that the sanctuary in question in eastern Bhutan is not in the disputed area, and the activities will all be done outside of the disputed area that has been highlighted. We'll still go and see if there's any way to improve the map for clarification, but I just wanted to offer this clarification. On the question from Aparna and car indicators, we do recognize that we need to focus on certain indicators that are lagging, in particular chemicals and waste in international waters. These projects at a time a little bit more complex to put together, and the second half of the programming in GEF 7 for these focal areas will focus on trying to maximize the global environmental benefits that correspond to these core indicators that are lagging somewhat behind. We welcome the suggestion to continue to keep focal points engaged on NGI projects, particularly as they get designed. So that's a very good suggestion that we embrace. On the question from India also on the fisheries indicator, I would say that 55% of all GEF IW projects to date have been focusing on freshwater fisheries. So we need to really step up our marine investments in the coming work program. But at the same time, I'm happy to report that the Commons Ocean program will deliver more than 30% of the overall goal for the fisheries indicator. The question from the Finland representative, Tanya, on coordination with other initiatives on the Common Oceans program. The program, I must say, is fully aligned and is supporting the UN-led BB&J process. So we're not preempting that negotiation, and it's fully aligned with what has happened already. And this was another question that I think Russia also touched upon. And among others, we are working on this global governance project and providing some advances in the global tuna and deep fisheries work. And let's also remind that we had a GEF 5 program on area beyond national jurisdiction, which was quite successful, and the current program is building on that, on those lessons. There was a series of references on climate financing. And I just wanted to clarify that we are close to 60% on climate finance or climate focal area spending in terms of programming, so we're not necessarily lagging behind. And we'll continue to engage with agencies and RFPs in the coming months to provide whatever support they might need in coming up with programming for climate change mitigation. And I also call your attention to the report on the scorecard that keeps track of climate-related financing, which we report frequently now on the scorecard, and that is above 60% of the entire GEF 7 portfolio. Let me see what else. I just answered the question from Russia, and just to complement that, that the program is fully aligned, the Common Oceans program is fully aligned with the BB&J process, but the program does not work on plastic, and it's entirely focused on the high seas. The question from, I think Finland asked the total going for LDCs in this work program, and it's actually 84 million that includes agency fees, which is about 14% of the program. The question from Russia, from Mr. Namov, on why Sudan is not included in the Gold Plus program. And the reason at this stage is that the GEF can only support countries that have ratified the Minamata Convention. That's the guidance that the COP gave us. And Sudan has not ratified the program, but later on, we can add other parties to this program, and they can come as an amendment to or an addendum to existing programs like we had this time around for 3 programs that I mentioned in my presentation. On the questions that came also from Finland, I guess from Togo too, regarding the possible weak programming of LDCs and SIDS. I just wanted to highlight that the Chemicals and Waste Program in Africa includes most of the LDCs. And in addition, the Africa Regional Coordination component is working in the coming weeks with the African LDCs and agencies and SIDS to reach an acceptable programming level as it was done in GEF 6. Was another question, I also think from Russia, regarding the 2 Black Sea projects, whether they are duplicating themselves, since they're both in the same geographical area. And the answer is that they're not overlapping. The FAO Black Sea Fisheries project addresses, as the name says, sustainable fisheries management with a special focus on small-scale fisheries. The World Bank Black Sea project, on the other hand, addresses actually pollution reduction across the Black Sea. So we ensure that there is tight coordination between these 2 activities and that they are mutually reinforcing. Question from Stefan on the green chemicals project and how countries were chosen. The implementing agency is UNIDO, and the countries were chosen where UNIDO has been working already on green chemistry. So they had an early start on this, and that's where clean technology centers exist. And that being said, the project has an incubation and also an acceleration hub. And this is one of the things that are good about these programs, that they provide these regional platforms or global platforms to help other countries beyond those that have child projects associated with them. And this can open for more competition for a broader range of countries to eventually join. On the questions also from Stefan on the India Thermal Comfort Project and some technical comments to improve the project impact, we do welcome the suggestions. I'm sure the agency will as well. And we look forward to more detailed comments as you committed to sending us. And regarding collaboration, the project emphasizes the importance of coordination between different government departments, states, and cities. And to support more efficient cooling, the project not only focuses on efficient equipment, but also in improving building standards that can reduce overall cooling demand. Also, a question from Stefan in relation to full lure co-financing. And the issue is that there is a variable co-financing because, number one, there are different crops, some like coffee, cocoa, palm, etc., where the global supply chain and the private sector actors are actively already engaged. Others like staples like wheat and maize, there's less of that well-developed supply chain at a global scale. Secondly, it also reflects the alignment with the already existing initiatives in the country. Co-financing was part of the selection criteria for agencies under the expressions of interest that we solicited, and also for the programmatic framework document. And the CEO endorsement request will come with written comments, with written commitments, and we will make sure that these are aligned to the extent possible with the estimates of expected co-financing that are included in the PIFs. The questions, I think 2 or 3 council members initially, I believe it was Nori, Jan, on the question of ODA and rules. As we responded earlier, all contributions to the GEF Trust Fund and other GEF Management Fund they qualify in the entirety as ODA, according to the rules that were established by the Development Assistance Committee of OECD, DAC. We prepared an information note to Council on this issue, and this was also part of the GEF 7 negotiations. And we confirmed that contributions to the GEF Trust Fund will remain ODA eligible through the 7th replenishment period, as more than 90% of the GEF financing will be provided to ODA eligible countries. And while this ratio applies to the overall GEF 7 period, it's also maintained or exceeded for this specific work program, since we only have one project in a non-ODA eligible country. The question from the US, from Rob, on the issue of BTRs and national communications, and thank you, Aparna, for your second remark on this, which we agree fully. And we appreciate, Rob, your comments, and we have been in upstream discussions on this, and we have been requested to support the developing country parties to prepare their first and subsequent biannual transparency reports, the BTRs. And we are currently developing these guidelines and also developing some framework to cost the BTR support. And we plan to have informal consultations on this in June. We look forward to continue engaging on this topic with you and other interest parties, and hope to find a good solution on this. But I wanted to remind everyone that according to the climate change COP, the new reporting requirement under the Paris Agreement does not yet replace the national communication guidelines for developing countries. So this is still is work that we need to do together. The other thing. Let me see if I forgot something here. I'd just like to, on the question of gender considerations, the PPG phase in particular is where we can build a lot of these elements and the data and the plans that you've commented upon, which we fully agree. And this is done on a priority fashion. Also, in light of COVID-19, this is going to be particularly important, and we want to be able to look at the impact on women and girls. And we already have detailed guidelines on best practices in gender, and we will continue to work with the agencies to improve and adjust in light of the pandemic. I appreciate Lucy's comments from our IPAC and our Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group. And we have been working closely with the agencies to further develop the Inclusive Conservation Initiative that was approved in the last work program. And this is going to be very important also to try to respond to COVID, and particularly in this vulnerable group, which is Indigenous peoples. And Lucy suggested an early warning system, which might be an interesting idea, and we might want to work with IPAG on exploring this. I think Aparna also asked on indicators for the chemicals and waste, indicator 9. The metric that we have tracks pure chemicals. With the new POPs, this amount is less than from the old POPs, as these new POPs are in the products themselves. So we are tracking the tonnage of products and subindicator through subindicator 9.6. And to this date, the chemicals and waste focal area will reduce and avoid 2.6 million tons of products and materials that contain POPs and mercury. We are working with the agencies to prioritize projects in subsequent work programs, and we will report on those later on in the GEF 7 cycle. Let me see if there's anything else. There was a question also about the current percentage that is going for OECD DAC countries. What we can provide you at this stage is that we are compliant, and it's less than 10%, but we can provide more precise figures of how that percentage is later on. I don't have it with me at this stage. With this, Madam Chair, Naoko, I revert the floor back to you.
Sure.
I think I covered most of it.
Yes, I hope so. And now I'd like to ask William if there are any actually that hands raised or flag raised for further questions.
I don't see any more requests for the floor at this time. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. So I'd like to invite the council to adopt a draft decision of this work program. Thank you so much. A work program adopted. Thank you. So let us now move on to the next agenda item. And I'm really watching my watch, and it's already 9:30, and we have only 30 minutes left, and we have 3 more items to tackle. So I need to really ask your collaboration. And I'm sorry if we mismanage the allocation of time, but let's do our best to finish as soon as possible. So next agenda item is business plan, GEF business plan, and corporate budget for FY21. I'd like to invite Peter to present the document. Peter, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce the GEF Business Plan and Corporate Budget for FY21. This document presents the combined FY21 budget request for the projected administrative expenses of the Secretariat, the staff, and the trustee. It has not been easy to prepare this budget request in the face of this terrible COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic directly affects key administrative activities, including travel and meetings, and it continues to evolve. It also creates a range of risks and needs that need to be addressed proactively by GEF going into the next fiscal year. The budget document sets out the Secretariat's plans to address these risks and our best estimation of budgetary impacts and needs in this evolving situation. The request also is designed to assure full delivery of the GEF 7 agenda and to kick off the GEF 8 replenishment discussions scheduled to begin in FY21. In terms of the overall figures, the request is well within the GEF 7 four-year budget envelope for the Secretariat agreed as part of the GEF 7 replenishment. In line with the replenishment discussions, the FY21 budget reflects a strong focus on efficiency and savings. It is based on zero growth in staff. It includes efficiency factors for travel and consultants adopted in the World Bank Capital Package negotiations. It reflects the contractual arrangements and fixed costs for office lease, equipment, servicing council, and World Bank cross support. And it includes budgetary support for the agreed GEF 7 replenishment priorities, including in the areas of the CBIT, gender equality, results-based management, and system-level improvements. The FY20 budgetary impacts, that is this fiscal year, the impacts of COVID-19 are shown in Table 1. FY20 travel expenses have been sharply reduced due to the shutdown of mission travel since mid-March. The underrun on the council cost line is due to the need to hold this June council meeting, the one we're in now, virtually, which has eliminated the travel and meeting costs associated with the normal in-person meetings. The budget request for FY21 contains a reduced travel budget compared to the approved FY20 budget. This is based on estimated reduction of travel due to restrictions from COVID-19, which are anticipated to continue for several months into the new fiscal year. This reduction is partially balanced by projections that some major meetings are expected to be rescheduled into the second half of the fiscal year. And this budget line also will support travel needs to kick off the GEF 8 replenishment discussions expected in the second half of FY21. The FY21 budget request also benefits from savings gained due to a negotiated repricing of the rent in our office space, which took place last November and December. This has led to reduced fixed costs for office space, both in FY20, the current fiscal year, and going forward. In sum, the Secretariat is presenting a tight and efficient budget for FY21. As indicated in the business plan, it will enable actions to address risks and needs from COVID-19 to kick off the GEF 8 replenishment negotiations, and to continue strong delivery of the GEF 7 agenda. As indicated in the document, the Secretariat's FY21 request is at a 0.3% reduction compared to the FY20 approved budget. The document before you also presents the budget requests for STAP, the trustee, the CBIT Trust Fund, and the Nagoya Protocol Implementation Trust Fund. The recommended council decision is set out on page 2 of the council paper. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Now I would like to open the floor for your comments and questions. So that William, could you please manage the speakers list?
Just giving a few more moments to anyone who may wish to ask for the floor. So Aparna has requested the floor first. You may go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for the presentation. Thank you for bringing this budget and work program. To be efficient in time, I will just say that I support the numericals, and I will focus on business priorities and deliverables for FY21. 1, implementation of GEF 7. We believe that you will have to work a little more innovatively in order to keep the OFP, PFP, and the implementing agencies together, given that there are restrictions on travel and organizing events. Number 2, replenishment GEF 8, para 29. There is a technical advisory group to be set up. I would be very grateful to understand how you would be selecting members and how you would ensure that the recipient countries and their concerns are also reflected in the TAG, which will lead to the strategy. We would also be interested in knowing whether there will be early engagement with the Council on the strategy before mid next year. Number 3, response on COVID. Much has been said. I will only focus on the task force and request that a holistic view be taken, because most developing countries are right now focusing on restoring livelihood. How do we help them restore livelihood without impacting environmental benefits? Number 4, national dialogues and extended constituency workshops. I will be really grateful if these are continued. Our constituency benefited a lot by your personal proactiveness in this NAOCO, and of course the support of others in your team. So we would like to see that. And number 5, which is really the meat of my intervention, is on the portal. Para 35 and 36, we are really happy with the development of this portal, and we really look forward to more work that has been suggested in this paper on live feed from the portal to the website, providing access and connections to all GEF, PFP and OFP, and operationalizing the advanced dashboard. We would really like a technical briefing, if possible, or a technical paper to be circulated to council members on this development. Thank you, and all the very best for the work program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aparna. Next is Adriana from Ecuador, followed by Stephanie from France. Adriana, you have the floor.
Thank you, William. Thank you, William. Just one small thing. The Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador constituency would like to thank the Secretariat about the country support program. About that, we would like to point out that the country support program is relevant for the recipient countries, and we would like to keep it going. Sometimes there is instability in our institution with continuous staff changes, so it's a need to update the new designated GEF focal points about GEF, everything, policies, strategies, focal areas, impact programs, governance, and so on. Until now, the country support program has been very useful for this update and share of knowledge. This is something we want to express. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Leonardo from France, followed by Peter from Australia.
Thank you very much, William. And thank you again for this comprehensive business plan and for setting up this effective virtual meeting. We have basically two questions and one comment. First question will be about the organization of this meeting. And we would like to know if you have made any specific arrangement that had budgetary implications. I think it is interesting to understand the cost implication of holding such kind of meeting, and especially when it comes to other climate international funds. Second question will be about the December 2020 meeting. We would like to understand or to know if you already have some views about the possibility to have such meeting physically or virtually, and the impact on the budget you foresee. And lastly, we have just one comment on the business plan, which is about the responsible investment guiding principles. We did not find it in the business plan, and just wanting to know, to understand whether it is planned to have this conversation next year on responsible investment guiding principles, because this is an important issue for some council members and especially for France. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leonardo. Peter from Australia, followed by Sana from the CSO network.
Thank you, William, and thank you to my namesake, Peter Lallas, for the presentation, and to him and Secretariat staff for the preparation of the budget documentation, which again is very clear and comprehensive. I have three very small questions. I'd appreciate just a clarification on them if possible. Para 9, in relation to staffing, talks about an underrun due to a longer than anticipated time to fill vacancies. I just wanted to query whether at present there were vacancies in the Secretariat, whether if so these are difficult to fill, and if there's any reason for that we are aware of. Second paragraph 37 on partnership, stakeholder and private sector engagement. I just wondered if there were any costs associated with the private sector advisory group, which was a good initiative that we have seen in the last little while, and whether there were ongoing costs associated with its continuation, which I'd quite like to see. And finally, in the final annex, Annex 3, on the trustee, a little concerned by the increases, 4.7% increase compared to the approved budget, due to the increase in investment management fees, which offset any efficiency gains that we are hoping to get. I know this has come up in the past. We're somewhat locked into the World Bank as our trustee. And I'm conscious that elsewhere, and others who are closer to the World Bank board will be familiar with this, there are moves within the World Bank group to rationalize the management of trust funds, which we are told as World Bank group shareholders should reduce fees and lead to greater efficiencies, which seems somewhat in stark contrast with the report in paragraph 3 of Annex 3, which talks about a 4.7% increase in investment management fees. So I was interested in what lay behind that, to what extent the GEF Secretariat is able to influence or put any pressure on the World Bank Group to revise down its investment management fees. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Sano from the CSO network, followed by Cordula from Germany.
So, thank you very much, and thanks, Peter Lallas, for this very comprehensive business plan. We appreciate it. Just a few comments. So it reflects on the almost the budget for the GEF family, but there is no budget for the GEF CSO network. Even our website is now down because of it was told that there will be support, but it is not. But as a result, Globally, the civil society members, they have been asking questions and they're writing to Secretariat, particularly writing to William. And he's forwarding the emails to me to assist them. So what is the solution? Is there any plan that GEF Secretariat wants our network to run smoothly with the knowledge management, information, and the website? Website is the entry point for that. I hope we can get an answer. Second is there will be the technical advisory group. So what is the possibility that representative from the GFCSO network and also representative from the indigenous peoples group, they will be the member of this technical working group. And then next point is gender equality. It comes always. Just a very small question. What are the indicators to qualify and quantify gender equality? And what is the target? As for example, GEF 7 is coming already. GEF 8 will come, 9 will come, 2030, the SDG will come. Is there any target from the GEF that from the gender equality level, they have this very specific scorecards to see when, what, how, who will do? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sano. Cordula from Germany, followed by Manrique from Argentina.
Thank you. We welcome the detailed presentation of the administrative budget for the financial year 21, and we would like to thank the Secretariat for its efforts despite the ongoing uncertainty of COVID-19, and we endorse the proposed budget request. We have two questions and maybe one comment. One question is to the trustee. Given the worldwide economic difficulties due to the COVID crisis, we would like to know if there is any impact on the GEF Trust Fund. And for the savings that you will be having in the Secretariat due to the crisis, will they go back into the general budget, or what will happen to these savings? These are the two questions. And one comment, like France, we would, well, on the one hand, like to thank the trustee for the constructive dialogue that we had with them on the responsible investment strategy. And we would be interested in when the trustee intends to present the proposal for the strategy to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Cordula. Manrique from Argentina.
Thank you, William. Thank you to the Secretariat for the document. Just two brief comments. We want to support the intervention by Adriana related to the importance on the country support program. It's really a very important program from all the countries in our region, and I imagine in other regions as well. And we really would like to see this program even improving, getting better with more resources allocated. And with regards to the intervention by Aparna on the issue of the GEF 8 replenishment negotiations, it is our wish that that process is as inclusive as possible, taking into account all the necessities and so taking into account as well all the voices of the different regions. Thank you.
Thank you. Stefan has requested the floor. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you, Peter and the Secretariat, for preparing a clear work plan and budget. We can support the budget. We just asked for the floor to highlight 2 points that were made by others. That is, the country support program is important also to our constituency, and so are the expanded constituency workshops. We hear with a certain concern the points raised by the CSO network, and we believe CSO network is an important part of the GEF family. We also join others related to some questions about the budget. one being the cost, if any, of the private sector advisory group, and the other one, the point made by Peter and by Cordula, which relates to the COVID crisis of if the trust funds management, one is the fee and the other one is of course the downturn of the economy, if this has any impact on the trust fund and the revenue from the trust fund. Over.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Tanya from Finland.
Thank you very much, William, and thank you very much for the document and for the presentation. I have 4 points to make. First, we can approve the budget. It's positive that expenses for office lease have been reduced. Second, we welcome the inclusion and estimation of how COVID-19 pandemic affects the budget this year and next year. Third, we look forward to seeing the white paper on the GEF's immediate response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And finally, we are interested in seeing the full budget proposed for the 8 replenishment preparations and meetings once a decision on the replenishment has been taken. And we would also like to ask the GEF Secretariat to be prudent on the total costs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That ends the list of speakers. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your engagement. And before I ask Peter to come in, I just maybe pick up one question about the GEF 8 process, because I may be the one who can say something about this replenishment process. Actually, the TAG, Technical Advisory Group, consists of actually the experts on the areas. It's not a representation of countries on a developed, developing or region. So that is the nature of that TAG group, and maybe later Gustav may want to explain more. But this is not necessarily a region or countries. But your comment, and several of you mentioned that the process needs to be inclusive and also that what are the opportunities of the entire council to be involved. This is a very important point, and I think that the new chair, who will come in, actually that tomorrow, that I think that we will have a really important conversation. I will have an important conversation with the new chair that how we could actually conduct that process to the best of the council. So with that, I would like to ask Peter to provide our response.
Sorry to interrupt now, just before we give the floor to Peter, Lucy from Indigenous Peoples has requested the floor.
Thank you, William. I don't know what's wrong with my hand. It can't go up there. We all must admit that COVID-19 has given us all challenges and challenging times, and GEF has not been spared. It is important to address its root causes, respond to them, and prevent future pandemics from happening. IPAC notes the root causes of the pandemic include the assault on biodiversity through the combination of relentless logging, mining, and wildlife trade, both legal and illegal. IPAC notes the sustainable consumption of wildlife is practiced by many indigenous people, which should be respected by any approach. Indigenous people also have protected areas of high biodiversity through our traditional practices and worldviews. This information should underpin any new deal with nature. The economic situation of many countries, as had already been given by some council members, due to COVID-19 is very difficult. IPAC is concerned that a focus on economic recovery may pose risks to indigenous peoples and their lands. The rights of indigenous people must be respected in line with prior free informed consent. And we really appeal that environmental and social consideration must be factored in any post-COVID economic recovery plan. And in fact, there are many green recovery opportunities to chart a new development course. Indigenous people have shown great resilience and this can provide a source of lessons for designing sustainable models of economic recovery, particularly in rural areas, coastal islands, and marine areas. The GEF has an opportunity to demonstrate best practices in electronic and remote ways of working across the globe. Despite the challenges that Indigenous people may encounter trying to contribute electronically, IPAC is well placed to provide input on the two activities listed in point 18. One is preparation for the white paper of GEF, response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and two, the GEF 8 replenishment process. Additionally, IPAC is also well placed to provide input to the elements of GEF 7 work program outlined in point 40. And of course, as the approved inclusive conservation initiative is certain to contribute in preventing future pandemics from happening, and the role of Indigenous peoples, including traditional practices, should be documented and communicated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I would like to ask Peter to come in.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks very much to all of the council members and civil society for the really excellent questions and thoughtful responses. We really appreciate it, and these are all very important topics relevant to our budget and the business plan as well. Let me just see if I can go through them. There are some comments that touch on more substantive aspects of our work, and so and a couple relating to the work of the trustee. And I see that Praveen from the trustee's office is online, and so I may, when we get to those questions, ask him to pitch in on that, as well as if there's a question for Gustavo. From India, from Aparna, thank you very much for the several comments and questions about the business priorities. On implementing GEF 7, you were highlighting the importance of being proactive in keeping the partners, the operational focal points, the countries, everyone together in a very difficult situation. We fully agree, and we are dedicated to that. It's one of the reasons we're putting together the COVID-19 information paper in this very difficult time. We emphasize in the paper itself to be proactive in addressing needs and risks. And you'll notice in the business plan, one of the points we mentioned was, as a result of the GEF 7 replenishment, we put together a document on flow and information and coordination in the partnership. And one of the key purposes of that document was to highlight the roles and responsibilities of operational focal points in governments and to work to empower them to be sure that that's known throughout the partnership. And the country support program actually is an excellent and important opportunity where we're trying to pursue that. I think the second point was replenishment, about the selection of the advisory group and recipient country engagement. Naoko, the chair, just touched on this. Indeed, the intent and purpose will be to make it highly inclusive, to include all the partners, the conventions, the agencies, the civil society, the donors, the other recipient countries having a voice. We've done this in the past, and we've continued to make strides to be sure we're doing that. It is a fundamental purpose of it. So we will, I think, have dialogue and consultations going forward to making sure we're working collectively to achieve that. On the COVID-19, your third point, and handling that, yes, it's of course critical to take a holistic approach. We're looking at the risks to programming and operations. That's why the risks on the risk side, the CEO sent last night this additional 3-month extension for the project preparation times to the deadlines in the cancellation policy. That's just one example of this. But beyond that, looking at the programming, Gustavo in the work program touched upon this, and so does our information document, to look at ways that our programs and projects can be proactive, and if there's ways to adjust them or make sure that they're doing what in fact they are already doing to some great extent, which is dealing with these issues. And we can talk about co-benefits, the benefits of addressing the source causes of the pandemic, but also livelihoods. As you mentioned, we very much are looking at the ways for the GEF programming and projects to support livelihoods. The small grants program is, of course, a very I think, important example of where that is achieved as well. You mentioned, I think, your fourth point on the workshops, and some other delegations did as well. The constituency meetings, the extended constituency workshops, the national dialogues. This is all part of our country support program, which is mentioned and highlighted in our business plan. Yes, I'm grateful. You were, I think, mentioning grateful to continue, and as some others did, we indeed, this is a very high priority for us. It is, in our view, one of the really effective ways that we can get the partnership together to exchange information, to learn about each other's priorities, to learn about strategies, and to do better. And now we're doing this virtually, this meeting, and so we're looking at modalities to do that with COVID-19, but without slowing down, absolutely. And the last, thank you very much for the comments on the GEF portal, the appreciation for it. It is hard work to have developed this GEF portal. There have been some challenges along the way. You know, it's a real upgrade to a new state-of-the-art system, but we also see much progress. Its automated features and its functionality allows us to collect and gather data. It allows us to connect the partnership in real time. We will be developing, as you mentioned, an advanced dashboard in the coming year so that we can have real-time dials to see the information based on the information that's collected in the GEF portal. The link to the website is being strengthened. With the operational focal points are in the system. We are staying in touch with them to see if there are any additional needs, but it also gives them, and in fact, the entire partnership that's inside the view. And so thank you for saying that. We are working hard on that. I want to also thank the World Bank ITS team. They've been really sensational, not only in the programming, but also when there have been difficulties to make sure that business continuity keeps going forward. So it's a labor of love and a work in progress, but we're still on it. Thank you for Ecuador, Adriana, for also your comments about the country support program to keep it going. Yes, as I was just mentioning, we are fully on with this and we'll continue to do so. And if we need to, with the COVID-19 restrictions, do it in the way we're doing the meetings now. In some ways, we will also pursue those avenues. We have a great team on that, and it's a collective effort, the whole program. France, the organization of the council and the cost implications, and then what about the December 2020 council meeting? Well, I mentioned briefly in the introduction, and you can see from table 1, the Secretariat's budget report, that the FY20 expenses, the council line, were cut basically by 50% from a projected $700,000 for US dollars for FY20 to $350,000, and that's because one of the 2 council meetings is being held virtually. And so therefore, the lion's share, almost all costs are no longer applied for this council meeting, and they are mainly for travel support, for the logistical support, for the costs of hosting the meetings. Since we're doing it virtually via a WebEx technology, those costs don't apply. For December 20, so it's some savings, actually, part of the reason for our underrun in FY20. In December, you can look at the budget request. We have assumed at this time that the December 2020 council meeting will be in person. And so we have budgeted for a full $700,000 for the 2 council meetings. If it is not able to be held in person because of the COVID-19, and we have to continue to assess that, then we will have savings. And we will report that just as we've had savings with this year. The question about let me see, the responsible investment guiding principles, will we discuss those? I might ask Gustavo or someone else. We did not put those specifically in the business plan, but let me just see if, while I continue to go on at the end of my comments, if anyone else from the team would like to provide any more detail. Thanks, Leonardo, for the question on that. For comments and questions from Australia, from Peter, thank you very much, Peter, much appreciated. Yes, the staffing line, as we mentioned, there is an underrun of nearly 5% there against projections. We mentioned longer than anticipated time to fill some positions. In fact, we had 3 positions that were vacated earlier, well, where the folks left early in the year in September-ish. One of them you all know well, who was our former colleague Klaus, of course, and there were 2 others. And they are, a couple of those are still vacant. They will be replaced but it is just a bit longer time than usual to replace them. And you might understand, as we are in transitions, there might be some reasons for having held off a little bit on that. But it is, they will be filled. That is the intention. And so that made the reduction due to cost turnover a little bit higher than anticipated. Each year we work quite hard to try and get that number right, because we know exactly what the staff are and the staff positions, and we can estimate the amount of turnover and the amount of time taken. In this case, one of those variables, the amount of time taken, has just taken a bit longer. The cost of the private sector advisory group, I just checked in on that, and the cost, I think, is in the neighborhood of $5,000. The team, and I may ask Gustavo or Claude to help me out on that, but it is for some, it's in that range. There is some consultant support for the private sector work. And you might remember also that last year we, the one new position in GEF 7 that we hired was the private sector position. This is Matthew, who is, you will see tomorrow. And there is some small travel expense, but I can ask the team to provide further information to make sure we have a precise figure on that. But those are some of the factors on that. There is the question about the trustee. Praveen, if you'll indulge me, I'll defer to you. A couple of questions to you about the 4.7% increase in investment management fees. There is an explanation for that in the annex as well to the budget paper. But hang on, Praveen. Let me finish up with go through a couple of other questions, and I'll see if ask for your help on that. For the civil society network, thank you very much, Sano, for your comment and your expression of concern about the budget supporting for the CSO network and the website. We appreciate the conversations that we have had with you and with Maria very much about exactly that point. You know, if there is an opportunity or a way to provide some support for the GEF Civil Society Network website. And we do know that your website, like our website, to have a functioning website is crucial for the partnership as a whole, as well as for the network. You know, these things are opportunities for knowledge sharing, information gathering. They provide a way to help organize for participation in the country support program. So we will look forward to following up with you following these discussions to see what might be possible in that. And thank you again for mentioning that. In terms of membership on the working groups and the task forces, these are all in process, including for the GEF 8 replenishment negotiations. It will be inclusive. That is our...
Peter, I think I answered that question. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay. And so then I'll go very quickly here because I know we're running short on time. And then on the indicators on gender equality, we could have, Gabriella is online if we want more detail, but I can say we follow very closely the GEF policy requirements on this. We have programmed into the GEF portal the requirement for agencies to give information, disaggregated information on the basis of gender that we can track and report. And there is an information document presented to Council on this already. From Germany, again, a question to the trustees, so I'll defer that one to Praveen in a moment. What happens to savings, I think, was another question, Cordula, that you asked from COVID-19 restrictions. So if we don't travel as much, or if we don't have a council meeting, they stay in the GEF Trust Fund, so we're not drawing on that money. And so it is still there, available, and then we will go through the 4-year envelope for the budget to see how we use it each year subject to council's approval. So they do not go anywhere. It is actually savings that could be used, of course, if there is a need in the following year. Argentina, I hope that answers the question. Manrique, thank you very much. Again, the emphasis on the country support program, which, as I've mentioned, is also a big priority for us going forward. The GEF 8 replenishment process, yes, for an inclusive as possible approach with all voices and regions. Stefan, the importance of the country support program in Switzerland, the ECWs, again, a big yes. And the question about the CSO network, which I just mentioned, and the costs of the private sector advisory group, that was also, I think, I hope I have answered that in my previous response. Tanya, Oh, thank you for the appreciation about the office space. Yes, we had a successful renegotiation of our rent. It did save us some money. It's good news. And we were quite pleased. The building owner realized that GEF is a good tenant. It's public money. So that worked out actually quite well. The effects of COVID-19 on the budget, you asked a question about that. We tried to explain in the paper. We do anticipate some level of continued travel restrictions, as Naoko mentioned at the beginning and in the paper. We looked at different scenarios based on we factored in the uncertainty and gave our best estimation of what would be the reductions in travel, recognizing that some meetings would be postponed, and that at the second half of FY21 there would be some additional needs with the GEF 8 replenishment. And as far as having a full budget for the replenishment, we do indeed will have in the fiscal year 22, a special initiative, as we've done in past replenishments, for the costs of the GEF assembly. And as in the past, that has cost about 1.7 million. And so we have budgeted that, and we will have a line item budgeting for that. The final question from Lucy, the IPAG, Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group. Thank you very much for the comments and the reflections and for taking the time to share those. The Indigenous peoples terribly affected by this pandemic, vulnerable people also in many places and others. I think a key point that you mentioned with which we would like to fully support and emphasize is the importance of learning from traditional and Indigenous peoples' practices in their relationships with nature and with wildlife. This is embedded in the Convention on Biodiversity, and it's embedded in our works, and also in the projects that are proposed. And that recovery, this importance of green recovery, sustainable recovery.
Winding up.
Yes, yes, this is it. So, yeah. So just to say that IPAG, providing input and having input into that is most welcome. And thank you. Sorry, Naoko, for taking so much time. I just wanted to go through the questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, Praveen, you are on. There are some questions addressed to trustee.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the questions. There are three categories. I'll keep it brief. One is on the responsible investment guiding principles, where we initiated an informal discussion with some of the key participants from the council, and thanks for the contributions and the inputs. We are still advancing on that, and we have not concluded the discussion. So we expect that to continue the discussions over summer, and expect to present the paper to the council in fall 2020. We have also mentioned this information in the trustees report. In the information section, in the last part of the trustee report includes this update. And then the second question is about COVID, impact of COVID on the investment returns for the trust fund. Almost 65-70% of the GEF trust fund portfolio is invested in longer term horizon. So that being the case, that being the case, we are not at this point. It is not really impacting the short term with market fluctuations, which is happening in short term. That is not impacting immediately the trust fund, but Treasury Department is closely monitoring the movement of this and impact. They're assessing the impact for not just GEF, but across the board, all the trust fund portfolios that are managed by the World Bank Group. So we will provide more updates and maybe in the next council meeting, which will be based on September reporting. We'll have more information to share with the council on that. But at this moment, in fact, the Treasury Department has adjusted the duration of these portfolios, and in fact, it is beneficial for the GEF in the short run. There we have seen some gains, and we have reported those in the Treasury report as well. And the question on increased investment management fee, as Peter was pointing out, Peter Lallas was responding to Peter from Australia on that. In the Annex 3, we have mentioned that as such, the investment management fee is a function of the liquidity levels. So there's a flat fee of 4.5 basis points that charged not to just GEF, but across the board, all trust funds managed by the bank. This has been set for a long time. I think there was this was about 3.5 basis points since 2003 until last year, where it was revised, and our treasury colleagues were there in the meeting to explain that the increase. But this has got nothing to do with the regular reduced fees, which Peter Mostrele will be referring to on the rationalizing the trust fund cost. This is derived by the liquidity levels, which are actually determined based on the timing of inflows and outflows. And this year, particularly FY20, we're seeing the increase in the investment management fee because of higher liquidity, which went about 439 million, beyond more than what we had expected when we presented the budget a year ago. Primarily due to slower disbursements, drawdown from funds from the agencies, from the trustee by the agencies. So that is one of the reasons that has increased the liquidity levels. And we are seeing, as you can see in FY21, the projections are lower because we are expecting that the timing difference is going to be, the agency is going to be catching up on those things. So that is how the liquidity levels have are influenced. And we, as I mentioned, this 4.5 basis points, this is something not specific to GEF. It has been applied to across the board all the financial intermediary funds and trust funds managed by the bank. So I'll leave it at that for now. Happy to take any questions if there are more questions. Over to you, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, Praveen. I think that from our side, I hope that we responded to most of the questions. So maybe back to the council. And William, can you check if there are any other flags from the floor?
I see no further requests. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I would like to invite the council to adopt this proposed budget. Thank you so much for your approval. So let us move on to the next agenda item, which is another important one, work program and budget for the GEF IEO office. So may I invite Yuha to present your paper? Yuha?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I should probably say even good night to some of you. I realize that it's already past midnight in some parts of the world, so I hope I won't be putting you to sleep. It is my great pleasure to present to you the work program and budget of the Independent Evaluation Office. Here is the, let me, I have to get to my, here is the outline of my presentation. I would like to point out that exceptionally, given the extraordinary situation, we are not presenting the completed evaluations to you as working documents. This is for the reason that the virtual format of the council meeting and the limited time would not allow for a full discussion of the evaluations and the management responses thereto. You do have the evaluations as information documents, and I will briefly highlight the key findings and conclusions of the evaluations in what follows. But please rest assured that they will get the full attention they deserve in the context of the comprehensive evaluation of the GEF, and the lessons and recommendations emanating from these will be fully discussed and considered. First, amongst the 3 evaluations we have completed since the December Council meeting is the Annual Performance Report 2020. As always, the APR is mainly based on data from completed projects. There are now 1,706 completed projects that account for $7.5 billion in GEF grants and $36.2 billion in co-financing. The APR 2020 cohort includes 134 completed projects for which terminal evaluations were submitted during the calendar year 2019. And these are being reported on in APR for the first time. The projects in the APR 2020 cohort account for 618.8 million in GEF grants. 83% of the projects in the APR 2020 cohort have satisfactory or higher outcome ratings as compared with 80% cumulatively for all projects. 71% of the projects are in the likely range for sustainability as compared with the cumulative figure of just 62%. And this upward trend in sustainability is statistically significant. Similarly positive is the materialized co-financing ratio of almost $8 to $1 GEF dollar invested, which is higher than foreseen at project planning. All data underlying the APR are now available on our website, so you can go and check for yourself. We're also pleased to report a generally good quality in terminal evaluations in terms of reporting on project outcomes and monitoring. Reporting on environmental and social safeguards has been somewhat lower. The reasons to this are still unclear, but it appears that there may be a delay in how quickly agencies act on new GEF guidance. This is something that we will explore further in our forthcoming evaluation of the agency self-evaluation systems. As you know, the Management Action Record tracks the level of adoption of GEF Council and LDCF, SCCF Council decisions based on the recommendations of the evaluations conducted by the IEO. The current MAR reports on the level of adoption for 8 different evaluations, which includes 2 that pertain to LDCF, SCCF. As you see, in 7 of the 8 cases, the recommendations have been largely adopted. There is agreement on this conclusion between the IEO and GEF Secretariat. In one case, the evaluation of the small grants program, the adoption was rated only medium on the grounds that the Council decision called for a reconsideration of the upgrading criteria for participating countries. The management has told us that it has indeed reconsidered the criteria, but continues using them without any changes. It is worth noting that the new evaluation of the SGP has been started, again as a joint exercise between our office and the UNDP-IEO. The upgrading issue will certainly come on again in the new evaluation. As you may recall, we started a new type of evaluation, which we dubbed strategic country cluster evaluation. The first such SCCE focusing on small island developing states was presented to the Council in December 2019. At this meeting, we bring to you 2 more SCCEs focusing on least developed countries, LDCs, and the Sahel and Sudan, Guinea, savanna biomes in Africa. Why these particular clusters, including the SIDS, were selected was to shed light to GEF's programming and results in these countries with often challenging contexts, and the Council in the past had actually drawn our attention to some of these issues also. As it happens, there is some overlap between the clusters, as a number of the countries covered in the Africa evaluation also are LDCs, and SIDS equally fall partially in both categories. Consequently, the findings in these 2 evaluations are also overlapping, and I will present both together. The objectives of these evaluations were, first to provide a deeper understanding of the determinants of the sustainability of outcomes, and secondly, to assess the relevance and performance of the GEF with regard to the main environmental challenges from the country's perspective. In addition, we looked at gender, resilience, and fragility as cross-cutting issues. The evaluations utilized mixed methods to evaluate performance and sustainability and to capture lessons for the future. You will see the scope of the portfolio in terms of countries, numbers of projects, and amounts of GEF funding on this slide, so I won't repeat that. Both evaluations found that GEF support to these countries has been relevant to the national environmental priorities, and this relevance has not decreased with the shift towards integrated approaches. In all of these countries, there are important synergies and trade-offs between environment and development goals. Given the nature of the challenges, adaptation to climate change has played a central role in the African biomes and in the LDCs more generally. Multifocal area interventions that often combine biodiversity, land degradation, and climate change, and notably adaptation, have helped countries to tackle their environmental priorities, including those at the local level, through integrated programming. Such multifocal area projects scored highest on outcome ratings, but lowest on sustainability, especially in the African biomes. It was found that climate resilience is seldom addressed outside of adaptation projects. The evaluations confirmed earlier findings about post-completion sustainability in LDCs. Most LDCs are characterized by a low level of socioeconomic development, human institutional capacities, and scarce financial resources. These characteristics have negative effects on the performance of GEF projects. The performance dimension that the LDC SCCE focuses on the likelihood of the sustainability of outcomes. Quality of the project design is key for sustainability. The evaluations concluded that sustainability of outcomes is more likely when considered in the project design. Sustainability can be improved by fostering the synergies and mitigating the trade-offs between environment and development objectives, and elaborating financial arrangements that can continue after project completion to deliver benefits over time. So those were the evaluations completed by the IEO. In addition, the IEO was subject to an independent peer review. Following good practice by the Evaluation Cooperation Group of the Multilateral Development Banks, the UN Evaluation Group, and the Evaluation Network of OECD DAC, I suggested a peer review of the IEO, which the Council authorized in its meeting in December 2018. I subsequently commissioned a high-level group of external experts led by Saraswati Menon. The panel included the Director General of Evaluation at the Asian Development Bank, Marvin Taylor-Dormond, and the Director of Evaluation of UNEP, Michael Spilsbury. Their report has been made available to you, and a shorter summary presentation is available on the IEO website. Under normal circumstances, Dr. Menon would have been here to present the findings. As we are the evaluand, it is not appropriate for me to present the results to you. Suffice it to say that it was a healthy experience for once to be on the receiving end of an assessment. I resisted the urge to be defensive to the best of my ability and sincerely think that the peer review provided a number of valid and useful critical insights into the performance and operations of IEO. We have prepared an action plan in response to the recommendations, which is available as an information document. The action plan is prepared with clear steps and timelines. Some of them will require management cooperation, so we will discuss them further later in the year. So, evaluation work in progress. The most important aspect of our work program is, of course, the 7th comprehensive evaluation of the GEF, also known as the OPS7. The approach paper will be discussed separately a bit later tomorrow, but let me just say that all of the evaluations that we have made available today will contribute to OPS7, and many more are underway. This slide lists all of the evaluations that are already in progress. Some of them are well under implementation, while others are only at the stage of planning. You will find all of the approach papers on the IEO website. One question obviously pertains to how the pandemic affects our ability to conduct these evaluations. We have suspended fieldwork in mid-March, like everybody else. The good news is that we have been conducting a lot of country visits until the time. Just in the context of the 3 SCCEs, we have visited 19 countries, and that's not all of the countries that we have visited during this period of time. And we will be ready to roll again when the situation so allows. In the meantime, we are conducting thorough portfolio analyses and reviews of project evaluation reports. We're also carrying out a lot of geospatial analysis and exploring the use of data from other sources, such as World Bank household surveys that can be combined with our own data. So I'm confident we will be able to provide you with quality evaluations. As you will see from the schematic presentation of the timelines on this slide, we are now entering the most intensive period of conducting evaluations that will feed into OPS7. This is simply for the reason that about a year from now, the bulk of the evaluation work must be completed so that we can start synthesizing all the evidence collected for the final OPS7. At the same time, we do want to conduct the evaluations as late as possible in the process so that they reflect the latest developments and data. This is particularly important when it comes to the integrated approach pilot started in GEF 6 and the GEF 7 impact programs that are still quite early in implementation. Unfortunately, this also means that you as the Council will be receiving a lot of evaluation reports in the coming 2 Council meetings after this one. Then very briefly on knowledge management and communications. Continuing OPS7, we have established a page on the IEO website where all related materials and updates on component evaluations are posted. This page will be updated regularly. We are also establishing a regular consultation mechanism with partners regarding OPS7, and we will keep the Council regularly informed. I wanted to mention also that there is another page on our website dedicated to materials pertaining to the COVID-19 crisis. We produce an analytical report of GEF's response to earlier epidemics such as SARS and Ebola, and how projects are now responding to the current pandemic. This was the first report of its kind amongst the evaluation offices in the multilateral system. Apart from that, we continue participating actively in the international evaluation communities in order to stay at the vanguard of the evaluation profession and practice, in particular as it comes to evaluating at the nexus of environment and development. Then finally, the budget. As you see from the bar chart to the left, we had some savings to our approved budget in fiscal 20. These savings came primarily from the cancellation or postponement of the travel and field work during the last quarter of the year. Our request for the coming fiscal 21 is $6.630 million. This figure is well within the Council-approved 4-year budget. As indicated earlier, fiscal 21 will be the peak year in our work program due to the fact that this is when we must conduct bulk of the evaluation work for OPS 7. We intend to carry out this work within the regular IEO staffing structure. There have been no changes since last year. In our operational model, one of our staff is normally leading any evaluation, and we engage consultants as needed for specific expertise. So this is what I submit for the Council's approval. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Juha. Now I would like to open the floor. Your comments, reflections, questions. William, you can manage the speakers list.
Thank you. First speaker, Tanya from Finland.
Much for the documents and for the presentation. We welcome the excellent work of the Independent Evaluation Office during these exceptional circumstances and the inclusion and estimate of how COVID-19 pandemic affects both work and budget this year. The strategic country cluster evaluations give valuable information on to what extent outcomes are sustainable a few years after project completion. We have two questions. First, how could financial sustainability, which comes out as a challenge in both cluster evaluations, be strengthened already in project preparations? And second, amongst the conclusions of the annual performance report is that a substantial percentage of terminal evaluations don't include ratings for execution and sustainability. How will the GEF Secretariat follow up on these findings? And we wish to make some points also on the peer review of the independent evaluation function. It is commendable that the GEF has participated in the valuable exercise of peer reviews related to evaluation function, now for the third time. The GEF's evaluation function was perceived to be highly credible, with cutting-edge know-how in the field of environmental evaluation. We would like to encourage tapping into this added value and sharing this expertise even more. Environmental and climate issues are cross-cutting for many organizations and actors, and the GEF could potentially play a significant role in contributing to this field of evaluation. As recommended, we would like to encourage the GEF to take concrete steps in further advancing the mainstreaming of human rights, gender equality, and the rights of persons with disabilities as part of the evaluation function. Furthermore, we hope that through the peer review, the GEF will be able to find new solutions to increasing the utility and monitoring of management responses at strategic level in order to facilitate long-term organizational development. Finally, we also take note of the finding that the Council does not fully exercise its role of oversight of the evaluation function by giving very limited attention to the management responses to evaluations and to the management action record tools. We certainly take this finding seriously. And we look forward to the formal management response and the revised evaluation policy in December this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tanya. Next is Stefan from Switzerland, followed by Marita from Sweden.
Thank you very much, Juha. Very, very informative, your report. We take note with great interest of the progress made by the Independent Evaluation Office in its work program. We look forward to the many evaluations that are to come by the end of this year and the beginning of next year. We approved the budget as requested. It is in line with the 4-year budget of the EAO. Allow us 2 comments. One, with respect to the country cluster evaluations, African biomes and LDCs. In our view, these 2 evaluations show that the inclusion of socioeconomic benefits are a key factor for project-related sustainability. And we expect that such findings will be duly taken into consideration related to the assessment of sustainability of projects in the future. We also take note with satisfaction of the positive response of the Independent Evaluation Office to the recommendations of the third peer review of the IEO. It's good to sometimes have these external evaluations. We welcome the recommendations of the peer review to shift the endorsement role of the Council from evaluation reports to the management response and actions. And as my colleague said before, we look forward to the respective proposals to come from the Independent Evaluation Office. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Stefan. Marita, followed by Adriana from Ecuador.
Thank you, William. I had some problems with the mic. Let me start first by thanking the IAO for its valuable work, and we can approve the proposed FY21 budget and work program. I would also like to take note and welcome the results of the peer review, which is very positive with the response that you described, Juha. We would also like to especially note the upward trend on the sustainability numbers. 76% is indeed a big change from before, but of course we, as you know, we would like you to improve this even further. But this is a big step forward, and we welcome that. With the recent MOPAN evaluation and results in mind, I know this is not everybody, all countries are not participating in this, but we had a presentation of that last year, and we think with that in mind, we would especially like to ask the IAO if it is possible to evaluate how well the GEF contributes indirectly and or directly to the strengthening of good governance and the respect for human rights through its projects and programs. We noted in the responses from in the written responses to our questions, is that something that you will look at in future evaluations? So I stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adriana, followed by Peter from Australia.
Thank you. The Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador constituency just want to congratulate the Independent Evaluation Office for its extensive and important work, and particularly the evaluation of the GEF support to sustainable forest management program that is important to our countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adriana. Peter, followed by Aparna from India.
Thank you, William, and thank you, Juha, and through you to all your team in the IEO for an excellent report and a good presentation and all the work that sits behind it. I'll be as brief as possible, just a couple of supporting points. One outright is to support the budget proposal in front of us and the work plan. Particularly note encouraging results that have come out of the 3 completed evaluations that you presented. In particular, improvement over time on sustainability ratings. Sustainability, of course, has been a focus of the Council for the last couple of years, so it's good to see evidence of improvement from your evaluations on that. Also, the increased inclusion of gender considerations in GEF interventions with co-financing. Another positive trend. We would like to encourage the continual tracking of and hopeful lift in improvements to implementation of social and environmental safeguards, and also on disability inclusion, tracked through time. On the strategic country cluster on the LDCs, rather, this is more a comment for the Secretariat and indeed for agencies. Would ask that they consider carefully the outcomes of that evaluation and draw out the lessons for programme and project design going forward, noting that while there are some positives, there are still some issues to be addressed. The performance of projects in LDC is lower than in the overall portfolio. Sustainability, financial sustainability being a challenge, etc. So I think there's a lot of very important points there that project design considerations need to reflect, both from the Secretariat but also from the agencies. Finally, commenting, supporting others, we are looking forward to, although albeit slightly daunted by the number of evaluations that we will be looking at over the course of the next couple of meetings, but it's important work. Thank you to you and to your team, and a strong commendation from this seat. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Aparna, you have the floor.
Thank you, William, for calling me. We would also like to support both the work program as well as the budgetary ask. I think that the IO is a very important and valuable contribution to the way the Council provides oversight and guidance to CEO Jeff's work program. So we greatly appreciate the work program that you have brought. We are happy to note that you have found 80% and above of the project as satisfactory on outcomes, and also a high percentage in the likely range for sustainability, as Peter just mentioned. But there is one cause for concern, and that is the level of compliance with the terminal evaluation guidelines for full-size projects, which has some compliance gaps on reporting and implementation of ESG. So we would like to hear from the Secretariat whether this is being taken up for some corrective action. Second, we are extremely welcoming of the professional peer review, and happy to note from Juha that there will be an action plan presented in fall 2020. I would suggest that Secretariat should be forward-leaning and try to get involved in the action plan, because basically it's a bilateral and cooperative effort to inform the Council much better on how we can do better as a team. On the evaluations, we are supportive of the country cluster evaluations that have taken place, would like to endorse Marita's comments on good governance. And in the ongoing evaluation on FCS, maybe the additional impact of COVID in these areas where there is less government control or government presence would be useful. In stakeholder consultation, we would like also to cover the methods and modalities for engagement with the national government. And there is an ongoing evaluation on MSME and informal sector that is due to be completed in April 2021. We were wondering whether you could bring this forward and it could provide some inputs into the implementation plan for the private sector engagement strategy. With these suggestions, we wish you very well, and the IEO work may it prosper. Thank you.
Thank you. Aparna was the last speaker. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, and all of your comments and engagement. Now, I would like to ask Juha to respond to those comments, and maybe also that Gustavo may come in and some of the questions raised and for Secretariat. So Juha first, please.
And thank you, everybody. I am, of course, very moved by the great support, as usual, from the Council to the work of IEO, and this is very heartening to me. I don't think that there is very much for me to respond in these comments. I take note of some of the comments regarding sustainability, for example, but some of the responses to those might be more really for the GEF Secretariat and to the agencies to answer. One of the things that has come up and came up also in the questions and comments from the council in advance of the meetings pertains to these issues related to good governance, human rights, and more generally then issues pertaining to the socio-economic benefits and gender issues and so on. And we will definitely pay attention more to these things, disability being one of them also. We will discuss this a little bit more tomorrow when we talk about the OPS 7 approach paper. So I won't go into details about it now, but I just want to assure you that we have heard you. I have heard you loud and clear on this matter. Also, when it comes to the peer review and the follow-up to the peer review, I think that's very important. The action plan actually is there already. There is an action plan attached to the information document that we have submitted to the council. And there are a number of things that the IEO can do by itself. But the important part is that there are some of these things that which will require the cooperation of the management as well as the council, and some of you have pointed out to the key issue that the peer review raised, which is the follow-up process to the management, to the evaluation recommendations and to the management response. And what is recommended really is that, instead of just taking at face value what we say and the council decision being that the council endorses the evaluation recommendations and the management response, there should be a more concrete timeline and a more concrete action plan, which actually is then discussed, and that is what is endorsed by the council, and that is then what is actually monitored, rather than the evaluation recommendations that are, by definition, inputs to the process, actually. I think I would just leave it at that. I think that mostly covers what were there, and I just repeat that I'm very thankful for the comments, and I hope I didn't leave out any major thing. I have taken note of everything. Everything is written down. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. Maybe may I call on Gustavo to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Naoko, and thanks for the comments and questions. This question of sustainability or durability has been with us, as you know, for a while. The good news is what you just learned, that the upward trend in terms of the ratings. So this is quite good news. On the other hand, we need to continue to strengthen the design of these projects. And if you recall, we presented a framework to the council in which we committed together with the agencies to start enhancing the dimensions of sustainability across all GEF projects by making sure that there are multi-stakeholder processes being built, that our stakeholder engagement and involvement is of high quality. The tiers of change are, again, of high quality, and also embedding adaptive learning in these projects. Of course, this work is quite recent, and the results of these interventions will come later on. But the framework also provides for reporting to be of higher quality at terminal evaluations, because if these elements are embedded in the design since the beginning, we'll be able to track and to work with agencies when these elements have not been adequately evaluated in terminal reports. So this work is underway. I would like to thank staff for having produced very, very useful products that we are embedding this, such as the theory of change guidelines, the multi-stakeholder platforms paper, and also the durability analysis. So all of this is being now embedded into project design. The question of the quality of terminal evaluations, of course, we need the cooperation of the agencies to improve on that front, and we can, of course, become a positive force for that to happen. But it depends a lot on how agencies embrace this task, and of course, we support that. Thank you, Noah.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, now can I have one, I missed one question. Thank you. One thing from Aparna was this question about the private sector study we are doing on this micro, small and medium-sized enterprises. And I just checked with my colleagues working on it, and we've done some field work on it already, and there's some of the results are coming in, but it's fairly early in the process. So it's very hard for us to provide actually early results on the whole study before mid spring next year. Let's say March, approximately March, if we have the first replenishment meeting or something like that, we will bring something there. But before that, it will be challenging. Sorry about that.
No, thank you so much, Juha. Maybe from my side, Juha, your final part one comment about this. That then the IO's recommendation to be followed up, how followed up, right? And this is a very important issue. And as you mentioned, it's not just the IO, it's also the GEF, but also the council. Without having those three really working together, seeing to each other eye to eye and working together, we can't really take this issue to the next level. So I think that is something, it's a very important issue, but it really needs a good discussion among three parties. I just want to build on what you have just said. Thank you. So with that, I would like to go back to William. If there are any other stuff, flags or hands raised.
No further requests for the floor. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to invite the council to adopt this proposed paper from the IEO. Thank you so much for your approval. So thank you. Now, with almost 1 hour delay, or more than 1 hour, actually the delay, we are entering into the last item of the day. And that is the report of the SRC Selection and Review Committee. And on this one, I would like to invite Matthew, or the chair of the SRC. Matthew, are you there? Could you please present? I would like to really hand over this chairship to you, Matthew. Yeah, please come.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, well, thank you very much, Naoko. Yeah, once again, I'm Matthew Harsager. I'm the council member for the US and in the current chair of the Selection and Review Committee. I'm joined today here by my colleagues on the SRC, Ornella Cucci from Albania, Yoshitomo Kondo from Japan, Carola van Rienswever from the Netherlands, and Aparna Subramani from India. And a sixth member of our committee, Coletta Ruhamia from Rwanda, was on the committee but recently left the council, so unfortunately can't be with us here today. Last June, the council, in anticipation of the completion of the second and final term of the current GEF CEO, Naoko, initiated the process for recruiting her successor. The council authorized the SRC to carry out this task on its behalf and approved a budget for the recruitment process. The council subsequently approved the finalized recruitment process in the updated terms of reference for the GEF CEO out of session under a no objection procedure. The SRC subsequently engaged SRI Executive, a Dublin-based executive search firm, to provide professional assistance in recruitment advertising and outreach, candidate screening and assessment, interviews, and reference checks. The SRC was also supported by the World Bank's HR Client Services team, who administered the necessary contractual arrangements and ensured that the recruitment process adhered to relevant World Bank policies and procedures. And so over the past 6 months, the SRC has overseen an intensive worldwide executive search and recruitment process. In its performance of this task, the SRC's objective was to ensure an open, fair, merit-based, and transparent recruitment process, one which produced the best and most highly qualified candidates for this position, consistent with the terms of reference approved by the Council. In May, the SRC completed the task set out for it by the Council, and from a field of 106 candidates, selected 3 finalists for the Council's consideration. Last week, the Council convened an executive session to meet virtually with the 3 finalists and then make its selection. The Council decided by consensus to appoint Mr. Carlos Manuel Rodriguez as the next CEO and chairperson of the GEF. Therefore, I propose that the Council formally adopts the decision to appoint Mr. Rodriguez as the next CEO of the GEF for a 4-year term. And I'll turn it back to the chair in just a second. And right before I do so, I would just like to remind council colleagues that as we discussed last week, we have asked for volunteers to speak on behalf of the council tomorrow, welcoming the new CEO. And so indeed, a few of our colleagues will do that on our behalf tomorrow. And so now I turn it back to the chair.
Thank you so much, Matthew. And actually, the congratulations to the SRC and also the council to conduct this process so transparently, so smoothly within this very difficult condition. And really, really hard offered congratulations to make this excellent choice by consensus. I think this is so important. And I think that then you are really making, you have done such a great job. And then, I think that then tomorrow we will actually have a very good session with a new chair. But before that, I would like to invite the council to adopt this draft decision that is actually included in the document. So maybe William, can you actually look at the floor and see any flag up?
Thank you. Nobody has requested the floor.
That is great. So that then the proposal is adopted, and we will now have a new chair that then who is joining us actually that tomorrow. I think that then I think that then we have an opportunity to invite Carlos and to actually address us towards the end of next tomorrow's session. So I really looking forward to it. So with this, I think that then we have completed today's agenda. I'm really terribly sorry with this delay of 1 hour. That then, and then it's very late at night in New Zealand, Australia. So thank you so much for staying with us. Before I hand over this to William for housekeeping, I just wanna also update with you about the 2 things brought under other business. So this one from France, the 30% harmonization issue, as well as the grievance cases. We will update you on this issue tomorrow under other business, but it doesn't involve any decision. That's my understanding. Okay, back to you, William.
Well, thank you. So just before finishing, thanking you again for your patience and your punctuality this morning. Tomorrow we will start at exactly the same time, and all panelists, that is, all the people who are active, council members, observers, etc., will receive a link for tomorrow's meeting immediately following this meeting. So look at your emails, it's coming in. If you don't get it, let us know. For the attendees, there will be a new link on the website to be able to join to tomorrow's meeting. So bear that in mind, the links change, so please use the new ones. No more than that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Thanks, Naoko.
tomorrow.
Thanks, William.
See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much. See you
See you
tomorrow.
tomorrow, everyone.
See you. See you tomorrow. Very good.